And it's starting. Good morning, good afternoon, or really good morning, early morning for Ashish. Today, we've got a great presentation from one of our most active MVPs in the SharePoint space. He's going to talk us how you can actually go out and integrate and make SharePoint more productive with PowerApps and Flow. So this is something that's actually he's been working on for a while. A really engaged community member, and I'm looking forward to this topic. So, Hashish, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Oh, before you do, I always get the question, is this going to be recorded? Of course, it's being recorded right now. And if you go back and replay it 30 seconds, you can hear it. And the Q&A panel, I will be monitoring that for Ashish. So if you have any questions for Ashish, put it in the YouTube channel and I'll actually ask him in real time. Other than that, why don't you go ahead and share your screen so we can see your slides. And I'm actually going to change the desktop to you. And I'm going to let you know as soon as we can see your screen.
Sure, Charles. Thank you.
We can see your screen looking at us. That's perfect. Why don't we go ahead and Alt-Tab to PowerPoint? And I'm going to put myself on mute as you. Perfect. Why don't you introduce us to yourselves and what are you going to cover today?
Cool. Thank you. So my name is Ashish. I am a principal consultant with Empire here in Australia. So very early morning for me, but good morning, everybody. And I work with customers in and out talking about Office 365 productivity. So I talk to them about how they can leverage their investments from Office 365. So what we're going to talk about, one of my favorite topic is how SharePoint, the word known problem after InfoPath is forms, is getting fixed by PowerApps. And is PowerApps really the tool I can use and migrate my InfoPath forms to SharePoint now using PowerApps? So I'm going to cover up these scenarios as how you deal with the Power Apps while working with SharePoint and how you customize your forms. Very common scenarios what I have seen across uh, the customers and how you fix those things in Power Apps or build those things in Power Apps. As I go further down the path, intro about me is I am a Microsoft MVP, and I have been working on SharePoint from last 10 plus years. I'm not sure how many, but I did work on Windows SharePoint Services 2.0. So it's a really deep experience with front page onwards. So I know a lot, all the things as front page and InfoPath transitioning and now Power Apps working. I love really doing the work in the latest tech. So I have been working on the Power Apps and Flow from last 1+ years since it was in the beta and was released. If you want to have more information or have any further questions after the session, you can follow up on my Twitter on the underscore Ashish Trivedi handle, and I'm happy to connect and answer any questions if there are any. Cool. Now let's further go down and yeah, this looks like a bit old school style as what we're going to do today. So first, the important thing is we have to understand how SharePoint customization works and how we shall take an approach towards this. Then I'm going to jump into a bit more detail as how SharePoint composite solutions work. And this is the area where our power user, or I say more advanced users work. And that's where they build the business applications using the SharePoint features. Then we're going to talk very specifically around the form-centric solutions and what all the scenarios are there where we build forms, we build business processes using forms, and why we build those. Then we're going to talk about as what challenges were there and how the Power Apps help us now to rescue that scenario for us. Now, I have talked about and I have seen about a lot when the InfoPath was announced, no more new releases. And I see still in SharePoint 19, some of the wish list says we would like to see InfoPath back. So I'm going to talk about that as well, why we go with the Power Apps path and not with the XML style InfoPath path. Uh, After a couple of the talks topic, we're gonna jump into the live demos. And in the live demos, I have defined as uh, beginner, intermediate, and advanced level demos. And we're gonna look at from point one to point 100 is how we start, how we build, and how we complete our applications. And thanks, Charles, for handling Q&A for me on the live sessions. And I'm happy to take the questions as they come or at the end of the session if there are not many.
Sounds good.
Cool,
Right now, we've got only one question, and I'm running down the answer right now.
cool, great. That's good. Thank you. So now first let's understand what the SharePoint customization approach is. From like SharePoint 2003 onwards, I am hearing the same approach. The approach attributes have changed over the years. So if I talk about the approach first is if you have to customize in SharePoint and build something, first use something which is built in, or in terms of SharePoint, called as out of the box. So if you have a scenario where you have just a store documents, where you store information, you might need containers to collect that information together. You create sites, you create SharePoint document libraries, you create SharePoint lists. And with that, you can just use the out-of-box design or built-in capabilities of SharePoint. And that helps you straight away in doing the work what you are trying to do. So it's a very neat and clean system and designed the way it works. The next is the declarative capabilities, where you define and use some of the components together to solve a purpose. So things like your ECM capabilities. Now, in the ECM capabilities, you may want to create a library with some rules, with maybe some with workflows, and then you define your document lifecycle. Something similar on the search. So you will see the search results come up, but you would like to enhance those easily using the XML or XSID or just using the JSON approach, and that's very straightforward as a declarative capabilities. Something like what I was seeing in recent time is a SharePoint column formatter JSON. So where you can just define a JSON when creating a column, and it can format the output on the page for you. So it's very straightforward properties available for you to use. You don't have to really write a code for that. The next piece is really interesting, and it's for the power users, talking about the SharePoint composites. So if I talk about the tools, we have Access, it was old time, the Excel, the workflows, PCS, InfoPath, and things like that. So they used to build the application which business needs sometime. So very common scenarios where I have seen InfoPath and Access working previously were building a application management and then getting that is information stored in Access and then building some reports out of it, or using Excel spreadsheet to present some information in the web pages, using InfoPath to create multiple views, and then based on the status of a list item, when the InfoPath opens, you have a specific view switching, and you see the specific information sometime, which is just for that purpose. So you customize all that information, and that's the SharePoint Composites. Power Apps, Flow, and I'm not sure if Power BI, but Power Apps and Flow suddenly sticks with the SharePoint Composites place, and they replace all the legacy tools or styles or approaches to do the digitization in modern time. The last bit is the managed code. And managed code is a developer weapon, I say. And you can do really anything, a custom tailored made to your solution. So if you look at the pictures below, they clearly talk as what I'm talking. So you can get your kitchen or your house done as what you like. Really don't have to rely on a built-in system or built-in things available from off the shelf in in the stores, and you have to just assemble those. You do really custom work, and And that's something is strong as well in Office 365. And I love that Power Apps and Flow both support me to connect with my managed code. So I can straight away go and write my apps. And if I see that I need some more advanced capabilities, I can hook up my managed code sources like as functions and things like that and get the work done. So that's really should be the approach always in SharePoint customization. Now, going deeper in the composite solutions, as I've talked about, really business applications should be done quickly, fair, and easily. And if it is a business application, something internal to the business can do that or should be able to do that. And these customizations can be a browser-based customization and workflows. So you might see a lot of connected web parts on a page and solving a specific purpose, like a dashboard. I really don't need a developer to build that for me. Yeah, things like using SharePoint designers and other power tools who can do a drag and drop design or declarative design and save that information and next time the things run as it is. In the old time, we have seen users designing forms in the browser using InfoPath or adding JS to the forms and making sure that the customizations are in place. So you go and edit those browser forms, add your JavaScript on the pages, or you build your custom forms. There has been, after the InfoPath retirement, there has been a lot of third-party solutions trying to solve this problem in the forms. Now, uh, not the spreadsheet forms, but really they're sort of a quick survey. So if you need to build some surveys on the spreadsheets, you can create those very quickly. When you are building business applications, you certainly would like to connect with some services so that you can consume the data which can be in the LOB system. And you would like to push that LOB information into your application so that user can work on it and store things in SharePoint. So you would like easy access to multiple services and consuming those services information. You and again at the same time you would like to have some low code enhancements like a small JavaScript injections or calling a REST service or calling a web service and doing the work. And as I see, and if I match all these requirements of a composite solutions to Power Apps, they all matches and they all are available straight away for end users. Now, in many business applications, you build forms and you build forms to collect information from user or get data gathering, or you're building a business process which is just random sometime, or you're working with the user in a workflow in like a recruitment process and you would like user to provide more information and you build forms around that. So it's really about how and what process you are working and what sort of a form you need. You should build up a form-centric solutions. Now, in the InfoPath days, they were good. Now they're still good and supported as per the Microsoft documentation, but you should not really go the InfoPath way. Now, I say Power Apps is really a perfect replacement tool for them. Now, sometime I have seen customers building up the forms which are in list and customizing using Power Apps. And at the same time, I have seen some customers building a totally a third-party component-based forms, or they might have built their own custom forms framework. Now, if I suggest using a list form and editing it with a supported style of customization is a recommendation. That's personally from me. I don't like to build up a lot of forms using a third party or going down the path of inventing a framework for yourself. Because as you know, a lot of time Microsoft Office 365 gets update, you may break your system designs or the forms, which may be a problem for business as they have to wait. till you fix those problems. Now, it really depends, as I mentioned, as what you're trying to do with these forms. Now, you might have seen that there is a Microsoft Forms apps as well in the Office 365, which is different than Power Apps, and that solves a different purpose altogether. So if you are just doing random surveys and you would like to see the information very quickly, the results basically out of it, you want those applications to be available outside of your organization, you might really want to go that path, not the Power Apps, because Power Apps is not really available for external user scenario, and I'm hoping soon it will be available. So I was working on a public event, and I wanted my information to be collected. First, I thought Power Apps, but then I went to Microsoft Forms because it's really easy to do that in a specific scenario. But when I was working on my leave application management for a customer, I know the Power Apps is the best solution because it's going to be used internally and does all the things what I need to do, including the approval processes using Microsoft Flow as well. Now, let's talk about some of the scenarios which InfoPath was not, which where the Power Apps was not there, but in the last 6 months, it has gone ahead and touched all the things. Now, after the InfoPath retirement declaration sort of thing, Microsoft was working very heavily on Power Apps, and really, I really appreciate Power Apps team and thank them to come up where we are right now. So things like your rules, which were there in InfoPath, you can easily set them up. The formula Excel like style formulas, they are very, very neat and clean. You can use them straight away in your Power Apps controls and set the properties. Power Apps 6 really like a native integrated with SharePoint. So if you're working on a list, you might have seen previously in the previous SharePoints, like design this form in InfoPath, and you see that now in Power Apps. So it's really native integration with SharePoint and supports all the scenarios. Along with that, you have your developer capabilities as well. So like I have seen some of the InfoPath forms where developers have written a code behind. Same way, really don't have a code behind scenario, but you can really do all the callings to get that work done in the services. Now, InfoPath is was really just SharePoint specific scenario and doesn't cater if I have to bring a third party or even a built-in Microsoft product information. But Power Apps takes lead over there and gives me capabilities to connect with other system at the same time while I'm working on the SharePoint. So maybe it's a scenario as where I need accounting team and or account information from my Dynamics, and I wanted some information to be processed in SharePoint. So I can bring those two connections together in Power Apps and get my application up and running in no time. I don't have to work uh, on the coding to bring the Dynamics data in Power Apps. And that was the case previously when you have to work out is how you're going to bring those cross product information in the forms or even in custom forms. You have to write everything your own. And the forms performance goes down. And I have seen that practically as well. Even we have done all the API standards and Azure standards integrations in the custom forms. So Power Apps really help now to go and digitize your business processes. Before I jump further, just like to touch base, Charles, is there any specific question for me?
No, we're doing great on questions. We look really, really good at this point.
Great, thank you. Now let's jump on demos and then do some demos. So first, those who are new, maybe first timer, I'm going to show as how the Power Apps Studio works in web and desktop. The second is I will show you and talk about just how you can switch between a to a desktop mode and work on your apps based on your preferences. They all have the same capabilities. There is no difference. So it's just matter of application preferences. Then I'm going to talk about this when you are designing the Power Apps application, how you access them from SharePoint. The next level, we will go further complex. We will see what sort of different forms we have in the Power Apps. The important thing is what field types are supported in Power Apps, because we have a lot of different field types in Power Apps, and now we are concerned like I have a managed metadata field, is it supported? I have a user lookup field, is it supported? So we will see what all the fields are supported. Then we're gonna play with rules, which are very common, like on a yes no of a specific selection, you would like to show hide the information in the forms and make it more dynamic. We will go further down and investigate about the multiple forms in an application, how you navigate between those forms and save data. Because sometimes your forms are very big, you don't want them on a single screen, or they are navigation driven. You want them to have different screen so that you can focus on the content what you're collecting. Then I'm going to show a very simple scenario as how you build a flow and then integrate with Power Apps, and how you pass the information from Power Apps to the flow while you are doing the work. So that's very cool. While I'm doing the demo, you may see some delay because Power Apps load time and network time depends. So we will be happy to take questions during the demos as well. So let me first jump on my developer tenant, and let me show you some of the information which I have built first. So I'm on my SharePoint admin center here. And what I have done is I have created a taxonomy. Wait, let me just refresh
It's
that.
probably just timed out. We took a while. You had that page open for a while. I'm guessing it timed out.
Yeah, yeah, it is open from yesterday, so definitely it must have timed out.
And while we're waiting for that to refresh, there was a question about um, government cloud and actually keeping the web access working. Unfortunately, the web access client is actually owned by the SharePoint team. So I don't report into the SharePoint team. So Willie, if you could actually follow up with your account manager, that would be awesome. If you can't figure out who your account manager is, do send me a piece of email. I'll be happy to run that down for you. But it is a different development team than I work on. It looks like it's working again, Ashish. That's great.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Charles, for handling the question. Yeah, it's really about the structure of the teams in Microsoft and how to reach them. Now, as you see, I have created a demo group here, and I have created a term set called as Microsoft Technology, and I have listed some Microsoft popular technologies at the moment. I'm going to use this term store in one of the applications, so I thought I would just show you first where the information is sitting. Now, on my SharePoint site, this is a classic SharePoint site. This is not a modern team site, which is behind the groups. Now on this, I have a sample list here. And what I have done here is trying to test all the possible field types, which are more popular in the application design time. So I have a single line of text as a title. Why not I jump back to the design and show you that? That's much easier. And I'm just gonna do some zooming in this. It's much readable. So as you see here, it says title, single line of text. I have a multi-line of text. I have a choice field. I have a date time field. Yes, no, person or group, management data. And then we definitely have the built-in fields here. Now, if I go back to the list, and when I click on a new, since I'm zoomed in, the form may not appear correctly. So you will see them very straightforward looking in the new style of the new forms. This is not the pop-up dialog box. This is the Power Apps forms. So you can easily create that information here. Now you will see a good better yes no field options available in the apps. And this is a user field. Let me do and create a new item and then open and Power Apps. So I'm going to create a test live demo information on a multiple fields. I'm just going to create that multiple line of text, and I say yes, and we are working today. So oh, today is second for me, not first. So I'm a bit early than the work. Now here, I'm just going to select some of the information and I'm just going to hit save. Now, based on, as I was talking about the custom SharePoint features, you can highlight the fields or you can represent them in different way. And no coding, it's just a JSON behind the field. So you can straight away grab those examples from SharePoint PNP repositories and write in your column if you would like to represent information in a different way in list and don't want to program it. It's just a JSON behind this to highlight the fields. Now here, I have option to go PowerApps and create an app or customize my forms. So create an app will create all the three forms for you: to browse, display, edit forms. And the edit forms also work when you are creating the new forms. And that's the beauty, as you can define the same form to work in two scenarios. When you create an app, it's going to create a new app. Let, let me pull out a built-in app which I have just did yesterday while working and testing all the fields. So I'm gonna jump into the edit in Power Apps mode and it will open up in the Web Studio. And you can see it's pretty quick in opening the studio and downloading the app. Maybe a couple of seconds, but not more than 5 to 10 seconds anywhere on a decent bandwidth. Now, when it does, you can see the live information is available here. When you create an app, you get three screens. So one is a browse, one is detail, and one is edit screen. The edit screen works for your new forms as well. And how you see is using this here. So if you see here, the plus sign, it says, we zoom in here as well. The plus sign says new forms, and the new form is a command. uh, And then it says in the new form, what's the form which will be used for new? Is an edit form. And then I navigate to that form in without transitioning. So it goes straight to the edit form. And when I have defined a new form, it will go and create that instance without any item in it. While I'm working on browse form, if you see here, that goes to the detail screen. But let me show you the detail screen here. And these forms are very well integrated with the SharePoint system. Now you will see it goes the edit form again, but in an edit form command mode. So it will open this edit form with the past parameter as the selected item, and it is done automatically. So if you look upon the entire form and then you jump on the FX, which is the information, and then you will see the item is a selected item. So it's going to pass that item ID behind the scene for you to open the information in the ID screen. Now, why I was doing it, I was trying to test every possible option for me when I'm working on a single line of text, multiple line of text, choice field, take time, yes, no, person, manage group, and anything like that. So let me do a browser screen and then run this application. The application runs on a live data and I can refresh that information as well. So if I create information here in my trials, it impacts my list back. Now these are the different sorting forms. You can define your custom sorting forms if you like to, maybe using a date field or maybe using a title, whatever you like. If I go back here and if I go here, and let's change a field to a different timing altogether. have to hide that. Okay. And you see, yes, no field here. I'm gonna switch it off, and I can change user here if I would like to. I can remove user here, very easy, and it pulls it straight away from my Office 365. And if I want, I can change it to, let's say, a flow. I love these products, and I'm gonna do a save back to the list, and it comes back to the edit item, and then I can go back and refresh that information here. Because when I do a back, it just navigates back, it doesn't refresh sometime. And as you see, I have changed the date to the 10th of Feb. If I go back to the list and look upon my all items here, and I'm just gonna refresh, and it's 10. So as you see, based on my formatting, if the date field is today or less than today, it's gonna write. If it is ahead in the time, it's gonna be perfectly okay. So I can define all that fields, and even in new form scenario, if I go, and I'm gonna select no here. I'm just gonna keep date as today. Okay, and this is on admin here nowadays, and I wanted PowerApps here to go in. And as I mentioned, the manage metadata field is coming from taxonomy. So you can see the fluency in the field selection as well. With next turn, it saves that information straight away. And when I come back to a page refresh here, I can see that information is straight away available. So as you see, all the fields are perfectly supported in Power Apps natively, and you can work on your apps. Now, going further down the track, what I have done is created a conference request scenario, and this is very common scenario in companies where I would like to go to a conference and attend it maybe nationally or internationally, and request my manager to approve it so that I can book my accommodation and travel to that uh, uh, conference. Now it really depends sometime as I have to justify what I will learn there and how I will provide that information back to my employer, and we can work using that investment. So what I have done is created a list here. I will just show you some information around the list. So I have different columns type again here. Conference title, attendee name, location, the dates of the conference. Do you need accommodation? If yes, what should be the address? If you don't need, I don't have to really ask this question. Need travel? Yes. Then I need your airline and information. And then I can ask you, what's the technology focus of that conference? Does it map to your PD? And then give me a business case about it. Now, what I have done is I have created a simple app again here, but I'm gonna just do it again so that we can see what's happening in a live scenario. So I'm gonna create a new app, and as soon as you do that, you see a pop-up coming on the left-hand side, right-hand side of the screen, and I'm gonna say conf. I'm just gonna keep it simple. Conf request PA. I'm just doing PA as a Power Apps. I love that short form. And when you are building the app for first time, it may take a couple of more seconds as it has to build these forms and save it back to you. Now, after the saving, I can choose to continue in the Web Studio, or I can use it from my desktop-based App Studio as well. So now it's saving to the apps. And if you would like to see all your apps together in the PowerApps, you can go to the web.powerapps.com, And when you hit video login, you can see all of your apps together here. And you can always come to this screen if you would like to edit your apps and you are not really not sure which list or library they were associated with. And the beauty here is I can either open in the studio, which is in the Windows, or I can edit in the web as well. So if you're really not sure how to open your apps in the desktop studio or where to find it, you can come to this screen, go to the apps, and then you can say that I want this app to open in my studio. Other way, what you have to do is you go to the studio, do the open, and you might have to hit the refresh button to see that app coming through. And you, as you see, this is in a modified date sort order. Your recent apps is here. You can always do a edit. When you do the edit, since we have opened the web, it shows me a lock mode information. I can do always the overriding for that. Let me do the app here in the studio this time. If this doesn't look good, I will go back because the zooming will be a concern in the studio. But I would just like to show you how the web studio and the desktop studio looks.
And while we're
And
waiting
you,
for that, there is a question about somebody was asking, what's the best way of actually going out and synchronizing a SharePoint list with Salesforce? And I realize that we're talking about Power Apps right now, but Flow is probably the best technology for that. Ashish, are you going to cover that today? Because I know that you said you wanted to cover that next week as well in a different webinar.
yeah, correct. So on the flow, on this specific question, I can say yes, you can use the flow to synchronize, and it's a great way because it responds only to the change event, so you really don't keep running it. Uh, in this scenario, you can bring your Salesforce information in Power Apps if you need to, using those connectors available.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So as you see, the UI of the information for configuring apps and creating apps is the same. So won't feel any differences in the desktop and the web. I'm going to jump back to the web. So I have zoomed in a screen, and that helps me to do the work. Now here, I'm just going to close it and go back and then do edit again because I have opened in the desktop mode. So it's going to just take a download again, loading very quickly. Because now I'm editing, it's not going to do save again. It's just going to pick up from the saved information and load me. Now here, when you load first time, you see blank information sometime. You don't worry about that, even though you have data. And why you just don't see the information is because when you create the default screens in the Power Apps, the fields on the screen are mapped to something else. So if you come back and you don't see anything, you come back here, you go to the FX, and you will see that this particular field is mapped to the airline name, which is blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just change it to my title field, and you will start seeing that information. The next is about the compliance asset ID, and I really don't have to worry about that. I want my start date here, so I know when this is starting. And then you can change the business case to, let's say, location, so I know where it is happening. And then boom, you can see the information. So when it is blank, by default, SharePoint gives you different mapping, which it may not be correct for your requirement. So you can always come back and change those mapping. It's very easy, like pointing out to something else using the picker or typing in the formula box. I really love editing in the formula box because it have the intelligence, so you can see what you're doing. So it's much quicker. Now on this screen, what I have is this is a browser screen, so I see all that information. On a detail screen, I have the information here. I can go and edit that. Now on my edit screen, when I'm working on, The very basic question is, if I need accommodation in the location, then only I should be putting hotel name and the address. Otherwise, I really don't need information for hotel. So basically, if I say here, on the value of yes and no of the need accommodation field, you would like to change the setting to say show hotel name with address yes or no. Now, in the InfoPath and the Power Apps, there is a big difference in terms of how you do the things based on my experience. InfoPath is forward looking, which are the rules here, and I'm going to do the same. But if you would like to handle this more using the formulas, then it's a backward looking. So if I wanted my hotel name with address card to show or hide based on the value of need accommodation, then I will go and change the visible property here, sorry, here in the formula to say that if the field value is true, then show this, else false. And that's the formula driven. But the rule is a forward driven, and it's very simple. So if I have to build a rule, then I'm going to select this control on which I have to run this. I'm going to do a rule, and then it's going to ask the information. Now, as soon as I select that control, it knows that it's a yes or no field. So it knows that it's on or off. And I'm going to say if it is off, straight away, I'm going to define the action. Now, in the action, you will see the difference here. It doesn't give you a lot of pop-up, a lot of dialog boxes to do that. It's going to capture what you're going to do. So as you see, I'm coming back, selecting the information card here, setting the visibility to false. And then once I'm done. And it automatically picks up that if my value is false for a need accommodation field, it's going to pull up that information and set the visibility to false. And I'm done with that formula. Now, as soon as I apply that rule, you will see even the screen itself, it has made that hotel value. And if I change it here, yep, it shows me that. So let me do this in a real time. Let me go back to the browser screen, and I'm going to do a dry run. So it's like Visual Studio Debugger. So you click F5 and it runs in a debugging mode. I'm going to just do the editing of this information here. And you can see that straight away working in your apps and publish immediately. So you don't have to really wait for the downtime of your application or your servers and need any approval, because they are not going to impact anything else. And they work straight away in the forms. Now, I'm going to say ABC Hotel. I'm not sure if there is a ABC Hotel in Orlando, but I may find it next time. And I'm going to just save it down here, and it come back, and then I close it and go back to my list and see if that information is saved. Yep, saved it straight away. So so you can create your rules easily in the Power Apps, and they are pretty much same like the InfoPath forward-looking rules. And the best part, they don't show you a lot of pop-ups, and it's very easy to focus on what rule action should be. So you can define multiple actions in one go. You really don't have to define the end conditions like InfoPath, and you have to keep complicating these rules. Now, in this case, I have a very simple form here, which have the information, but this is not entire information here. If I look upon, where is my rest information like business case and airlines and all that? I can introduce a new screen by copy pasting it. I'm just gonna do a duplicate the screen, which is very easy. And once that's done, I can go and edit my screen here, and the formulas on in this gonna keep all that information. And now since we are on multiple screens, edit form one and edit form one underscore one. When the submit happens, how I'm going to handle that both information from the, the form one and form two text together and create that information. Now, this is a bit tricky and I don't want to complicate the formulas, but here I will go back to the PowerPoint and show you all the tricks, how you do it. Now, for new form, as we have seen that you define a new form formula with your target form, and then you navigate. Now, there are more than one commands for a button click, and you can always separate them using a semicolon. And that's the beauty. And I'm going to show you a sample which I already have, which have more than one command in one button click. The edit form, you do the edit form command with your form name, you navigate to there. Single page save, when we have the single page, it automatically defines that submit form. But if you have submit a single page, you're defining a custom form, you can use a submit form page and it will submit the current form. But if you are using multiple page forms, you might want to look at this complex formula, but it's very logical in terms of how it works. So when you run the forms, they work for the same edit and add new forms. So first you have to define what mode they are in. So if your current form is in a new mode, so current form dot mode is new, then you would like to patch. Patch is nothing but like a append or apply the changes back to the system. So what it does, it creates a patch. So if the file doesn't exist, it creates it. So your data source and default of the data source information, then the updates from form 1, 2, 3, 4, how many forms you have in your application. You can create tabbed information and things like that in this, and that makes very easy. Otherwise, if your forms are in edit mode because they are not in new mode, obviously it's a if else condition, you want to do the patch on the selected items from the gallery. So it's going to update your selected items. And once that's done, you would like to navigate back. You can define your navigation wherever you would like to, maybe on a thank you page or maybe back to the all items, and that's it. Now, when you are working between forms, you would like to navigate to the next page. Now, in your next page, it really again depends whether it's a new form or a edit form. So you can just simply say new form to the next form or edit form to the next form. So they are same as how the new form and edit form works. When you have to cancel something, you just use a reset form and you say go back. So you just reset the forms and go with one step back. It's like a history back in the browsers if you have done the uh, JavaScript programming. Now, by default, they sort the data with a one column, but if you would like to have more sorting, like sort by date and then by title, you can define more than sortings as well. So these are very simple formulas, but very important formulas for multiple forms to work. Now, I'm going to show you a quick Power App sample. So I'm going to just close this here and go back to my screen. And I'm just going to jump into my app here for the flow. So now for the flow, let me go back to my flow screen and show you what the flow does. Don't get confused. There are so many flows which I have running, and I'm just gonna work on the one which we need here. When you are working with the flow and trying to integrate with Power Apps, the first step has to be a Power Apps, and this step doesn't have any actions in it. So there is no property passing, anything like that. You have to select, okay, Power Apps, and then you define what has to happen in the actions. Now, currently, I'm trying to send an email to admin for approval of my conference request. And what I have here is a simple email body. Now, what I wanted to dynamically pass the information from Power Apps. So I'm saying in the body, send this information from Power Apps. And I can define more properties like to as well, like to whom it has to go. I can use my more complex APIs to look up my manager and things like that. But it's very simple. So the parameter is passed is the title of the conference for approval. Now, how do I use this in my Power Apps? Okay, it's loading. Great, it's almost there then as we came. Yep. Okay. Cool. So this is the same conference app with the same information. But what I have done is on my edit form screen, you will see this formula difference here. Now on my submit button, I have submitted the form, which is going to create a new item if there is not a new item or append the new item. Then I have introduced a Power Apps email, which is my flow name to run. And then I'm passing the text or the title value of the conference here, and then I'm navigating back to the home screen. How do I do that? Is I'm just gonna take this formula on a notepad so I don't mess up the formula, but I will show you that. So first thing what I need to do is the submit form, and this is my edit form one, and then I put a semicolon because I wanted to do the flow. So I go to the action, click on the flows. As soon as you do that, it goes and looks upon your flows integrated with your account and pulls up that information. You select your flow, and then it knows that it has to pass that parameter. And then I'm going to say data card 9, value 9. Dot text in that, and then navigate to the screen wherever I want. Browse gallery. I'm just creating maybe wrong here in the browse gallery, but this is how you get connected with the flow. So I will just put my formula back here so it's correct. Yep, navigate to the browser screen, like and then screen transition is fade. So as soon as I do that, I can define what parameters are passed from my Power Apps to the flow. So I can dynamically create either the graph API call in flow and get my manager and send it to in the to field, or I can assign my manager or select my manager here and then send it to the flow so that it can dynamically route my approval process. So these are very common scenarios across the Power Apps and flow where you are building processes and applications. Now I will jump back to this screen here. Yeah, so these are the very important formulas. I will put up them on a note here in the video. So if you need them, you can copy them easily. And that was from my side for today, as I have done a couple of the transitioning apps from the InfoPath and custom forms to the Power Apps. And these were my learnings as how you build apps and quickly use the built-in capabilities to design the apps. Any questions, Charles, for me? How did it go?
It would help if I unmuted. We are actually looking really, really good. There are some more questions on government cloud from Willie, but let me go back and take a real quick look, make sure no one's added anything else. But we're looking actually really good. I think, yeah, we've actually covered everything. So at this point, we're going to be able to give people back a couple minutes of their time. What you might want to do is preface what we're thinking about covering next week. You said you're going to join me next week and wake up at dark 30 again?
Not not the 4 o'clock, but yeah, 4:30 I will be there, so I'm on time. So I
That's
will
still
have extra 30
that's still
minutes sleep.
that's still pretty early. And what are we going to cover next week?
So I'm going to talk about the flow. very specifically, and that's gonna be how we use the Graph API in that. I'm a fan of Graph API, and I have talked about writing programs around it, but I'm gonna talk about how you use that intelligence in Flow
So,
and
so a
throughout
lot of
your
people,
business processes.
so a lot of people don't know what you mean by the Graph API. Can you tell them what when we say Graph API, what does that mean? What are we doing?
Okay, so Microsoft Graph API is a single endpoint REST-based API in Office 365 Word. So if you need any information in the Word of Office 365, you just hit the Graph API and tell what you need. So your emails, your calendar, your colleagues, your manager, your files, OneNote, Planner, groups, Teams, you name it, it's there pretty much,
That's
and
exactly
SharePoint as
right.
well.
How
Yeah.
many users? How many OneDrives? What is your allocation? How many licenses? Everything that you would want to enumerate, that's how you access it. So I am looking forward to that because that's actually one of my favorite topics right now. I am way too often going out and munging through the audit log, getting the information the wrong way. So I'm looking forward to your session next week. So with that, Ashish, thank you very much for waking up at 4 a.m. I really do appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to our call next week. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and bring this to call. Oh, and I want to thank Audrey Gordon, who actually joined us and was answering some of the questions in the chat window. So with that, I'm going to bring this to a close.